Dante Exum was supposed to be a starter when Kyrie came back. Jason Kidd made mention of that. And even with that being the case, Grant Williams does not start in this game. Grant Williams, who you signed this offseason for a 4-year deal, I think something like 48, somewhere around there.
That's a lot of money.
Making, a nice rotation player salary at somewhere around 12 a year. But he was anticipated to be your starting power forward. Like, that is the guy that you were going to start consistently. And he started out pretty well, but, he's had some issues. I know he had a little injury in there, but he's not been starting of late. And even in this instance where, you would anticipate with Dante Exum, who is kind of now the starter for now, because I know Jason Kidd does a little bit of moving around his rotations, he still doesn't start. Do we need to have a conversation about Grant Williams and where his expectations were versus where he is delivering right now, Blake?
Yeah, it's just a weird thing, and we talked about this in length before the show of just where are we at with him, because I don't want to be the guy that a month, 2 months in the season, I'm like, just get this guy out of town. He's not scoring this, not doing this. And there's more to it than that. But like we talked about, we brought him in hoping he could be somewhat of a defensive anchor, hoping he could be somewhat of a defensive helper and kind of be that guy to guide this team on defense, really lock in, be that one to mold it right there. And then also a guy that we saw in certain spurts in Boston be able to hit shots. And okay, he can get his own shot every once in a while. And he's in a limited role. And like you mentioned earlier, before the show, Joe Mazzulla didn't really play him that much in the finals.
Yeah.
So we're like, hey, we can snoop in, get this guy for a lower price, yada, yada, yada. He's on the team. And like Reggie mentioned, started off looking like Klay Thompson. Like first 2 weeks, like was money from three. I think he was shooting like 45% from three. Like he couldn't miss. Playing, I would say, above average defense.
In the month of October, he shot 45% from three. Like, I think really with him is with Grant Williams, you went and you looked at Grant Williams in Boston with the Celtics, where that's a nice rotation player. Mm-hmm. Defensively, he's solid, and he can give you a little something on offense.
Yep.
And the idea was, okay, in the role that he has there, which is fairly limited, that's that. With an opportunity for a more increased role, maybe he can step up and give you a little bit more of all of that, right? Be a stable defensive foundational piece. Be a player that gives you a little bit more consistent offense. Obviously, you didn't need him to be a big offensive piece because you have Luka Doncic, because you have Kyrie Irving. Those two are your offensive engines, right? But be around those guys, knock down open shots when you get them. That's all you need to do to be, successful around Luka. And you do those things and also be like a vocal leader. Boom, you have, existed and filled out that space that has been created for you, and you have made yourself worth the money.
And
right now he's not done that. I don't think of any of those things. Do you feel like he's landed on them?
No, and that's what it was so weird, because he started the season like, oh my gosh, this is a guy we got. He's gonna be a great glue piece, and then he just kind of fell off a cliff, and then he got injured. Then when he came back, and I think the biggest thing that you can kind of take away, you can not believe anything I'm saying right now. I think the biggest thing you can see is when a coach plays somebody. So that has nothing to do about us. Guys are out. Kyrie's hurt. Luka's hurt. The ex-player, fill in the blank, is hurt. And Grant still wasn't starting.
Yeah, man. Minutes will tell you about belief a lot of times.
Like, he's still riding the pine when those guys are out. That should be him filling in and being what we see from Tim. Obviously, Tim Hardaway's going to shoot the ball every night. But you're hoping that them two can kind of go back and forth and be your offense with the Jaden Hardy, Dante Exum mixed in and whatnot. But it just feels like there's not much he's giving you on the court. And I'm like, maybe my eyes are deceiving me. Looked up the stats. He's fifth out of all the bigs on offensive rebounds. When it comes to defensive rebounds,
is that just numbers rebound or rebounds per game?
Offensive rebounds per game.
Okay, per game.
Defensive rebounds, he's Luka's better, Derek Lively's better, Kyrie's better, Maxi Kleber, Tim Hardaway, and then we get to
Kleber's going to be tough because he has such a limited amount
so
of games.
We'll take Kleber out.
Yeah.
So Tim, Kyrie, obviously you want Lively. I don't know if I want Tim and Kyrie out rebounding our four.
No, and that's a tough thing, right? Rebounds, you're not getting a lot of those. I understand he's kind of a stocky guy, and maybe he needs to be in better shape, possibly, right, in order to help him. But, like, we were talking about this in kind of a more advanced technical way, right? We've seen teams, and I can't remember which team, and I feel bad for not having this. It might have been the Lakers, where you have one of those other big guys, someone like a Rui Hachimura, box him out, and then allow Anthony Davis to be free to get rebounds. You would anticipate that with Lively, I mean, Lively is a solid defender, but if you give him some help when it comes to boxing out, you can come down with even more rebounds, so he's not having to fight for the box out and also get the rebound. And Grant Williams hasn't necessarily been able to deliver in that way. And I don't want to make this entirely like he hasn't done anything, but if we look at just, okay, you talk about the shooting, right?
Yep.
The ability to knock down shots. In the month of October, shot 45% from three. Fantastic. No, month of November, 42%, 42.5%.
Yeah.
Great. The month of December, 32.8%.
That's a huge drop.
Yeah, and I mean, the true shooting percentage drops in that way. His usage drops in that way. His offensive rating drops. The defensive rating goes up, right? Like, you see the ways, and of course, none of these are absolutes, but I think the point of the fact of the matter is, the idea was you want him to come in and grow into a bigger role.
Yeah.
And right now, it's going the other way. It's decreasing. And if I was going to just give a blanket assessment of what Grant Williams is, you look at him and you go, all right, that's a guy that's, maybe a little inconsistent offensively, but, sometimes can give you, depending on the night, he'll be able to give you some, ancillary scoring. Defensively, he's a good defender, but he's a good defender if there's another defender that's good near him, right?
Yeah.
That's what you saw in Boston.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's a good rotation player. Maybe like a seventh man. You didn't sign him to be a seventh man.
Mm-mm.
You signed him to be a foundational rotation piece in your starting lineup.
Yep.
And so it's still early. Like, we're not even halfway, or we're maybe nearing the halfway point on the season, but you really need him to show himself to be more like that rotational starting caliber player than what he's been right now, which is seventh, eighth man type situation.
And we talked about this. The raw stats aside, if you're not putting up the stats, me and Reggie watch the games, which I'm sure all of you Tolos watch the games, you can really just see it with your own eyes that he is not making a large impact on the game. Like, if he was rotating and deflecting balls here and there and taking charges and setting up players all the time, sometimes the stats don't prove it. You're doing more than that. The stats, the advanced stats that me and Reggie just read out, the actual eye test, nothing's really there that jumps off the page that this guy needs to be getting minutes, which is what Jason Kidd sees. That's why he's not starting. That's why he's getting the second or third guy off the bench, or like when it comes to later in the game rotation, like they're not trying to rotate him in. And it got to the point where I'm watching the game with my friends, my mom, whoever. Grant Williams shoots the ball and tell me if this is true for you as well, Reggie. And I'm like, it's not going in. Like, I have no faith. Yeah. I'm like, it's not going in. I'm looking away. I'm getting on my phone. This shot is not going in. When he makes it, I'm like, oh Lord, he made one. Like, I'm just at that point right now with what we've seen the last month.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't need him to be a burner necessarily, but I need you to be a credible shooter, because the fact of the matter is, if you're Grant Williams playing the power forward in this league right now, you have to be able to shoot and stretch. And especially with Luka Doncic, teams are looking for opportunities to be able to help off.
And you get open shots. That's one thing. Grant's are
100%.
open. If he was shooting contested shots, falling away like Kyrie and Tim, I'd be like, okay. He gets butt naked open lick.
Booty butt naked open, as I like to say.
Like, wide open. And I'm like, he's got to make this.
Yeah.
Rim.
And the tough part about it is what that means is that defenses now are in a place where, as they are creating their defensive plan, they're like, we can afford to leave him open.
He'll make one or two.
And that makes it tougher on your stars. And from the 9-0-1, he was just as inconsistent in Boston. I don't know why people are surprised. That is 100% true.
I've seen a lot of Boston fans saying that.
It's one of the reasons why Joe Mazzulla ended up, basically benching him late in the postseason. And there was smart people. I know Zach Lowe of ESPN was one of those people like, why are you not using him? But the thing about it is, he's 25 years old. And he just turned 25. He was 24 at that point. I think the idea was he's still a young player.
Yep.
And with the idea of the development, you looked at Boston, you said maybe that there was more players in that place where he did not have the room to grow.
Agreed, 100%.
And so it was like, all right, give him an opportunity to have that role. And he said as much that it was the challenge that he was giving himself, was to be able to grow and become a bigger impact a player. And right now, he is not living up to that challenge. Now, of course, the time is not over. He has plenty of opportunity to still try and operate into that. But as of right now, he's not living up to that challenge that he has set for himself and that you expect from the Mavs for him to exhibit. And so that's been kind of tough. It's been nice that Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. have played really well so that they can be kind of starting caliber players for you right now. But, man, this team would be in a better place if Grant Williams was doing what you kind of hoped he would.
I'll ask you this. Does Grant Williams struggling stick out more because of how well Jones Jr. and Exum are doing on veteran minimums? Like, you see the comparison, money, contract, what we expected, and then you see this. Like, if the contracts were switched, would we view it differently?
It does stick out more, and yeah, the contract, the framing absolutely matters with Grant Williams. But I think also if the contract helps make the expectation, but if the expectation was what it was, you still can get to this place where you're like, no, he's not living up to that.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, the reason why it gets even more tough is that as Mavericks, we're in this place where we're starting to look at trade rumors build, and the Mavericks are looking to build this team. And one thing I was talking about with you is it feels like this year is a figuring out year, like a gap year.
Yep.
I don't think anybody anticipates them winning a championship or even really, really contending for one. And I think you guys understand what I mean when I say that. But seems like a year where you're going up and down your roster throughout the course of the season. You're figuring who are the players that we can reasonably see as being a part of a championship team.
You're gauging right now.
You're absolutely figuring those things out. And this is why it's super important. You need to figure some of those things out. And the ones that you feel like aren't necessarily that, you can now look at what these pieces expendable? Can we trade these guys? And Grant Williams, you thought that was going to be a piece that you knew, and now that's a piece that ends up having a little bit of a question mark.
I was going to say another question mark on the bench now.
And you didn't need any more of those. I mean, you already have like a Josh Green and Jaden Hardy that through their youth you're still trying to figure out. Dante Exum feels like he's giving you an answer. Derrick Jones Jr. feels like he's giving you an answer.
Tim is not like a question on how good he is, but where does he fit on this team?
Tim, also another question mark in a way. Omax is a question mark in some ways because of his youth, right? And you just didn't need more question marks, and unfortunately Grant Williams has slid his way into.
Hopefully Jason Kidd is the professor, because there is questions all over the place, man. There's not like a straight line solution, and like Reggie said, they're not really championship window right now, so you don't have to get it all figured out right now. This is a good time to figure things out while you're kind of playing with the kinks and figuring stuff out. But it's not looking great for Grant. Other guys are stepping up, but that's how basketball goes. It's ups and downs, and it's how you recover. So we'll see if Grant can recover.